To the 11:30 session, and it's, if I'm not mistaken, it is 11:30 local time. So welcome to the side event on transatlantic perspectives on integrating climate change mitigation and adaptation in cities. And I want to thank you for joining us here today. I know a lot of you have received the news already about the upcoming photo event at 12:45 for all the NGOs. Well, all the participants actually will gather at the exit of the blue zone, of the COP blue zone. So in order to not be a stumbling stone in the way to that biggest picture ever in COP history, we will of course respect that, and we will close our session 15 minutes ahead of schedule. Now this requires a lot of adaptation on our side here. So there will be, if you remember, and some of you might remember, there'll be some slight refreshments after the session. Now, of course, you can't stay here and eat it and drink and all calm. You have to grab it and then eat and drink, moving towards the photo shoot. We'll go all the way until 12:45, but close at sharp 12:45. So you don't have to worry about missing that photo opportunity. So you go then out right and then left. So without further ado, I want to jump right into the matter of the session. We already lost 15 minutes on our time slot. My name is Max Grünig. I'm the president of the Ecologic Institute US. The Ecologic Institute is a transatlantic think tank for environmental policy and sustainability with offices in the United States and in Europe. And two projects we're involved in are hosting today's side event here. And I want to introduce both of them very briefly. The first one, or I mean, they're in no order, but one of them is called ELEEP. It's the Emerging Leaders in Environment and Energy Policy Network. It's already in the 6th year of its existence. It's a transatlantic network for young professionals in the energy and environment sector. It's both from policy, it's from business, it's from civil society, it's from academia. So it's a very mixed group. Actually, some of them are here today, and both at the COP and later on the panel, and I'm really excited about that. And the other project is called POCACITO, which is an acronym for Post-Carbon Cities of Tomorrow. This is a project supporting cities in Europe and beyond in their transition to a post-carbon economy or society. So it's going beyond high ambition, it's ultra high ambition in a way. And we're very glad to have some of our colleagues from the project here today as well. I'll introduce the speakers as they come later so you can remember still who they are. And since we don't have a lot of time for our first speaker to waste here, I will go first to our keynote speaker right away. So I'm really excited and very grateful that we have here with us today Bärbel Höhn, who's a member of the Green Party in Germany, member of the German Parliament, the Bundestag, and chair of the Environment Committee, and so very well versed in climate change issues, climate change politics, and also mitigation and adaptation side, both of these aspects. I'm very glad to have you here today. And just a short announcement, Bärbel Höhn has to leave at 12 sharp. So we will have her keynote and then short follow-up question and answer, and then we'll move right away into the panel and say goodbye to Bärbel Höhn. So thank you very much. Give a hand of applause to Bärbel Höhn. And you can speak here at the podium, and I will give you the pointer. And I will open your slide. You can, I will. Okay.
Okay. Yes, so thank you very much for inviting me. Yes, I'm not only the chair of the Committee on Environment, but also in charge of climate protection, and even maybe it's important for this panel, city planning and buildings, you know. So yes, I would like to tell you a bit about our experience and our climate policy in Germany. So if we are talking about the Paris Agreement, I think it's very important to have the goals in your mind. The global warming must be to well below 2 degrees, and in the future not to decrease more than 1.5 degrees. So well below 2 degrees, for us, that means climate neutrality in the second half of the century. And that means for industrial countries like Germany that we have to decarbonize until 2050. And to decarbonize until 2050 is very ambitious. We are now on the path not of 2 degrees, but we are on the path of 3.4 degrees, and that means we must be more ambitious than all the sum of the NDCs altogether. And even in Germany, we decided to talk about the new goals and what does it mean for Germany after Paris. Yes, and even cities, they are very vulnerable. They have 2% of the Earth's surface and half of the world's population. And the problems inside the cities are culminating. And that means because a lot of these cities are very close to coastal regions, they have problems with the sea level rising. But also, for example, we had a study in Germany that our cities will be 10 degrees warmer than the surrounding of the cities. That means if there's global warming, we have a special problem, high temperature, 10 degrees higher temperature in the cities. And that means we need other sorts of planning our cities and have to look for other solutions. And so I think it was very interesting and very important for us to have this UN habitat in Quito, because all the cities could come together and make an exchange of the experience we have in all this, maybe in the solutions we are talking about, you know. Yes, so if we will solve our problems of climate protection, we have to do it in the cities too. Cities, on the other side, we have a lot of people who have a lot of innovative ideas in the cities, and so it's a place where we can look for new innovation and maybe new technology. But you know, yes, because we have very important actors. But you know, we must have a better city planning, because in the past we didn't think about climate crisis, and we didn't think about global warming. That means we have to talk about how to produce our electricity. We have to talk about our public transport system. It must be better and more attractive for the people to use that, and not cars. And even the cars we have must be electric cars in the future, you know. And even, for example, I'm living a lot of time in Berlin because I'm member of parliament, and so it's very important to have more space, for example, for bikers, you know. So, for example, in the last 10 years, when I started my time in the federal parliament, so yes, I went by bike to the parliament, and that were some other bikers. But now, when I'm now going by bike to the parliament, there is stop and go, you know. So because we have special streets for bikers, and sometimes we are staying there to cross the next road, and we are staying 10 or 20 bikers all together there. It's a bit like in other countries where you see a lot of bikers or motorcyclists, but in Berlin, especially the bikers. And I think that's an alternative even in the cities. And so what we need is green buildings on the other side. So we must combine heat and power systems. We must, for example, use more solar on the roofs to give the people who are living in the apartments of these buildings, give an opportunity to reduce the costs of electricity. So we are just looking for a mix of solar electricity from the roof, and on the other side from the energy supplier. But that means, for example, cooperatives. So there are a lot of new ideas to solve this problem. But on the other side, we even need more parks, more trees, because we need more shadows, and a better air situation. So yes, we have, and maybe we have to talk about, if we are building up new houses, why not wooden houses? Because we can catch the CO2 in this wood, and on the other side, we can avoid cement, and so maybe a double impact for climate protection. Yes, and what is Germany doing for CO2 reduction? So we started in 1990 with that CO2 emissions, and then we reduced our CO2 emissions in about 25 years of about 27%, but that means 1% per year. But if you are looking to 2050, it's not ambitious enough, So we have a national goal, that's not Kyoto goal, that's not EU goal, but a special ambitious national goal. And we decided for that 10 years ago. And so we said we must reduce our CO2 emissions till 2020 of about 40%. And now you can see that we will not reach it, because we have to reduce in the next 4 years 13% CO2 emissions. And so it's 3 times more ambitious than the last 25 years, But the next step is very ambitious too, because after Paris, we have to reduce our goals till 2050 of about a reduction of about 95%, and that means we have to reach this part, part, not that one. That is only 80% reduction, but that is 95% reduction, and that means that we have to look for really new solutions to reach this goal. And if you can see what are the very problematic sectors, especially that one, coal-fired power plants. So we have to shut down not only our nuclear power plants, but also our coal-fired power plants. We have a lot of problems, for example, with our transporting system, because we didn't have a really reduction in that sector the last 25 years. And even the building sector, we must be more ambitious. And that means we have to combine all the 3 sectors. And I think we need more electricity, because we need it more for the traffic system, but also for the heating systems too, So, and that means we have to look at the electricity sector. And you can see we started with our energy transition 15 years ago. And now we have a part of renewables of about 30%. And the latest data is not 30%, but 33%. So we have now especially wind, but also biomass, solar, photovoltaic, and the 3% hydro we had 50 years ago too. So that's old renewables, but the others are new ones, So we reduced our nuclear part of the mix of about 35% 15 years ago to 14%. So 20% less now nuclear, but also our lignite part and hard coal part. We had 15 years ago, 55% lignite and hard coal, and now only 42%. So we had a reduction of more than 10% in the last 15 years too. And natural gas would be good to have more of that, but it was in the past, it was very expensive. We have now a time that more and more natural gas plants are could run, and so maybe it's a better situation for climate protection, better to have gas as a bridge technology than, for example, lignite power plants. But that's not all, because sometimes you say, oh, what are you doing, you Germans, with all your high energy prices? Yes, we have high electricity prices, but you know, we paid for the whole world because we paid the development of the new technologies of renewables. And so I think we gave a gift to the whole world. Now you can use this very cheap renewables in all countries, and that's done. For example, the reduction of photovoltaic in the last 10 years was about 80%. And with our Renewable Energy Source Act, we gave a guarantee for photovoltaic that was installed 10 years ago for the next 20 years. So we have to pay for the next 10 years, so 10 years left. For the next 10 years is very high prices of the first photovoltaic plants, but you can now use the very cheap ones. So our burden is your profit, you know, but that's not, I think we had a profit and a benefit in Germany too, because, for example, we created 370,000 new jobs. So that is a really a job creating machine. And we have now the technology the whole world wants to have, and we can make the plans in other countries to do that. And even we have 1.5 million people who are prosumers, so they are producing energy and they are consuming energy, and that's why we had this dynamic, and that's why we have such a support from the population. For example, in the polls, 70 to 80% of the people in Germany like the German transition, although they have high energy prices. And I think the very important point of our energy transition was not the increase of renewables, but we put the energy production in the hand of the people. And that means electric power to the people, you know, so we could reduce the influence of big energy companies because now the people are producing the energy, and not only the big energy companies with a huge impact they have on the government. So yes, so very important questions for Germany is phasing out coal. We have to phase out in the next, we as the Greens would say, in the next 20 years to phase out coal. The conservative parties would say in the next 35 years phasing out coal. But, you know, we have to phase out coal. And that is the decision the politicians in Germany did. And even you heard that we showed here on the conference our NDCs and on our long-term goals till 2050. Yes, but on the other side, I think we have to save energy and to look for more energy efficiency. And even, as I said, we have to combine all the sectors, and we have to look for agriculture too, because we have to reduce climate critical emissions in agriculture sector too. Why are we doing all this? There's no other planet B, so we have to make our solutions here. My generation has caused a problem, so we are the only generation we can solve this problem. So I'm staying here looking for my children and grandchildren and would like to make a good job. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you want to sit or stay? Yeah, you may sit down if you want to. So thank you very much, Bärbel, for this great, well, both looking at the trajectory and then also forward looking what needs to be done still. And since we have you here, and since you are really you know a lot about politics and policy making and the processes behind it. And me personally, as a German living in the United States, we can't really just fully ignore the elephant in the room, right? Do you want to share any family-friendly thoughts about the recent election in the United States and what you make out of it as a pro-climate motivated policymaker or politician with regard to the future pathway and what we can do from there?
Mhm. You know, I think it's a good sign here from the conference that all the countries said we are very ambitious, and we decided in Paris, and we will go our way, although there was an election in the USA. You know, I think that's a first very important message. And so I think Trump maybe can block the renewables, but he can't stop the renewables. Even, for example, in Germany, we have now a phase of about maybe the next 1.5 years where the government now blocks the renewables because we have the last fight of the fossils, you know. And so in some countries we will have yes, all this discussion we have now in Germany, we will have it in the USA. But for example, we have a lot of connections to California, and a lot of states in USA will go ahead, and they are very ambitious. So yes, we have to make more contact with them. And when I remember Trump was visiting the agriculture states in the US, in America, but in Germany, the farmers, they were the winners of the process, because they can install wind turbines on their fields, they can install photovoltaic on the roofs of the stables, they have biomass, you know. So maybe in some years or months, you remember that he is doing a policy against his voters, you know. So Kerry said there will no change in the climate policy from the US because the market wants renewables. So be optimistic. I think it's the best way to overcome problems.
Thank you, Bärbel. We do have a microphone over there, portable microphone, so we can actually take, depending on how long they are, 2 or 3 questions here in the room. Please state your name. Please keep it short and to a question, and allow enough time for Bärbel to answer. And please, we have the first question from the audience. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Tozi. I'm coming from Cape Town, South Africa, and thank you, Honorable Member of Parliament, for that very brilliant presentation. I just want to zoom in on the last part of the chairman's part, the reducing of animal, not necessarily animal, but agricultural GHGs. I wanted to find out, since this particular COP is a COP of implementation or COP of action, is there a sort of a protocol that Germany has applied to change the behavior of its citizens? We know now that we have won in terms of cars and people are riding bicycles, but there's an element that we miss, which is sustainable diets or sustainable production of foods. Is there a campaign that is currently run in Germany to look into sustainable diets? I'm asking this because last year in South Africa, in Cape Town, we introduced Green Mondays, which focuses on healthy living and plant-based foods. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question.
Mm-hmm. You know, if we would like to solve the climate crisis, we need the local level, and that means we need the cities. And so in Germany, we have a lot of cities who are going ahead, you know, and even in the whole world. So sometimes because of the mayors or because of the parliaments are very engaged. And so we have a lot of cities, they decided, for example, Berlin, you know, our main city, they decided to reduce the CO2 emissions till 2050 of about 100%, so be fossil-free in 2050. And so all these cities make plans inside the policies, what can they do to reach this goals? And there are a lot of different ideas. As I, for example, told, Berlin is very active in this transport sector. So the number of bicycles are increasing because, for example, young men, and in the past when I was young, the men came with a car and asked, would you like to join me? And now they come with a very, very important and very expensive bike, you know. Would you like to join me with your bike, you know, or maybe with an electric car? So that changed a lot. And even in the different sectors, transportation, buildings, but for example, also agriculture. So if we are talking about what the people are eating, you know, so it's a bit more that the old, not all of them, but some of the old men, they are eating too much meat, you know. But the young people in Germany, many of them, they are vegetarians, and so, because in the past, meat means I'm rich, you know. And after the Second World War, the people said, oh, I would like to be rich and I can eat meat. Yes. And now the young people, they are not interested in that because they have everything, you know. So they were growing up with meat, and so they don't need that. So there are a lot of initiatives, even in the cities, to change, for example, agriculture. We make a lot of urban gardening now, small project. My favor is small-scale projects, you know, because you can integrate the people, people can participate at the process, and that's with our Renewable Energy Source Act. That's why we are so successful with it, because we gave the people the possibility to participate.
Thank you. Thank you. We have time for one more question. I think here the gentleman in the center, can we reach him? Thank you.
Hi, thank you for taking the time. Hugh Johnson with Drexel University in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in the US. Oftentimes Philadelphia isn't considered a coastal city, but we actually have 2 tidal rivers that run through the heart of our city. So given the fact that many adaptation strategies do have mitigation co-benefits, but capital is scarce at the city level, what recommendations would you give to city governments trying to balance between spending money on adaptation strategies to protect their citizens versus spending money on something that's purely a mitigation strategy, which they will see a limited benefit from, even though it's a global benefit?
I think mitigation and adaptation, and where is the main perspective on it? I think that is especially the situation. For example, if you are living in a city on the Philippines, or even, for example, New York. So our climate experts said that the Hurricane Sandy wouldn't happen without a climate change. So that is the result of climate change. And that means especially the cities that are very close to the coast and the ocean and the sea level. They must do a lot of things with adaptation. But on the other side, we have to do our work with mitigation, because if we don't reduce our CO2 emissions, we can't solve the problem. So I think we are now at a time that we need to spend money for adaptation too. I thought maybe 10 years ago, mitigation is very important and not adaptation, because we can't solve the problem with it. But I didn't think that, for example, the extreme weather, the typhoons and hurricanes and the drought and so are coming so fast. But they are now here and we have to react. And that means we need money for adaptation too.
And how can we integrate the two? How can we actually leverage what you mentioned, the co-benefits, so adaptation measures that benefit mitigation, or the other way around? Do you know, it's not a simple question, there's no simple answer, but if you want to maybe give a perspective on that, how to move forward, because that's kind of the hard nut for the future. Yeah, that's the tough question.
you know, most of the cities, they are growing. So more and more people are coming inside. And I think if we make a city planning for this new people who are coming, we must have these two aspects in our mind. Because if we make city planning, that, for example, for buildings, maybe new buildings, city planning for new buildings that are not so very close to the sea level, you know. Or for example, we are looking for new buildings that where the big part of the roofs are to the sun side, you know. So we have a better efficient possibility for photovoltaic electricity. I think we have to combine this in the plannings. In our city plans, maybe that is one idea, but I can't give you the idea for all the problems. So I think we must be more creative, and maybe we have to exchange our experience, because maybe there are a lot of solutions in different cities, but nobody knows about that.
Excellent, excellent. Good closing words also for the session, because that's what we are about. We have panelists from the United States, from Europe, and I'm really sorry, but in the interest of making the time 12:45 for the photo shoot in the end, and your schedule, we will end the keynote here, but you can, in the slides, you've seen the contact details, and you find them also online for Bärbel Höhn and her office to get in touch with her. You can also get in touch with us, of course, for follow-up questions. We'll be glad to continue that discussion online on Twitter, Facebook, etc. And I want to thank you again, and let's give you a round of applause. And thank you, Bärbel. So have a good rest of the last day of COP22. It's 12:01, and I would like to ask our panelists now up to the panel to join me here. We have, not in the order they're walking necessarily, but we have Axum Teferra, we have Anne Jensen, and we have Tüzcin Baycan. And I hope you find your right, so you sit behind the right names there. Okay. And let me just go back to our PowerPoint real quick. Perfect. You're a clean energy planner at the Boston Metropolitan Area Planning Council, MAPC, and you work on climate change action and have a lot to tell us. I would like you to be as concise as possible. You do have a few slides in here, and I think you can actually, yeah, if we just go, this is your starting slide, and you can use them for referencing. And I wanted to go right ahead and ask you a question, though. So from what we heard before, yeah, we just had this election result come in. You're in a US city, you're in Boston, in Massachusetts. And how do you see that impacting your work and your projects in Boston? I know we talked about it a little bit before already, yes, but if you can try to answer that, maybe tough question, but maybe you can try that real quick.
Thank you, Max. And to begin, I think it's very important that cities and states in the U.S. pressure the federal government to ensure we're still working towards meeting the Paris Agreement's commitments. So we'll continue to do that. But in spite of that, Massachusetts and Metro Boston itself has been very progressive on climate change for some time now. In 2008, our former Governor Deval Patrick signed the Global Warming Solutions Act, and it set goals to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 25% by 2020 and 80% by 2050. And so we were among the first states to do that, and that's below 1990 levels. And a big driver in that direction has been on energy efficiency, which we call the first fuel. And then there's been a lot of success there because of many state incentives that have come into place. And then many municipalities in the state have also are participating in the Compact of Mayors to really show their commitment at a global level. And here's a map actually of the region that I work in, 101 cities and towns. And then if you zoom into the innermost 14, we have this Metro Mayors Coalition of representatives from these 14 cities and towns. And it was after Hurricane Sandy that they realized, wow, we really are very close to New York City. This could have happened to us. It probably will with climate change. How do we prepare? It was a big wake-up call. And so they formed this platform and launched a climate preparedness task force in order to address mitigation and adaptation. Held a first summit in 2015 to focus on preparedness, and the risks for us are really sea level rise, increased precipitation, and increased heat. And so we're moving forward with 4 particular objectives in that preparedness umbrella. And then just yesterday, actually, the mayors convened for a second summit on mitigation. So we're developing an agenda for the local level to continue to advance mitigation goals. And that's primarily in transportation, building, energy efficiency sector, and renewables.
So getting back to that right away, what are good examples, or how do you combine mitigation and adaptation in Boston? And what would be some actually specific cases or examples that you would like to share here?
Sure. So through the Metro Mayors platform, that's been really ideal to force the mayors and their staff to meet regularly and find those synergies for mitigation and adaptation. And right now, I would say we're able to merge both and see co-benefits on the energy side and in smart growth land use planning. So on energy, we're trying to push distributed generation, clean microgrids, and renewable thermal, as increasing heat is a big problem for us. Well, I should begin with how Boston is one of the older cities in the US. And so a lot of buildings do not have central air conditioning, which is unlike a lot of other US cities. So we're beginning to see an increasing demand for cooling technologies. So we're trying to make sure that it's renewable thermal that goes into place there. And then on the land use planning side, our most successful example has been a partnership with Trust for Public Land. We are developing this climate smart region tool. It's a web-based GIS tool for planners. And it's going to help you decide what are the optimal locations for green infrastructure interventions. And there are 4 criteria we're looking at when we say green infrastructure solutions. It's cool, connect, absorb, and protect. Cool is how do you reduce urban heat island effect impact? And on the mitigation side, that's hopefully then reducing cooling demands. Connect is creating more appealing bike paths, walking paths, so that there's a mode shift that's more attractive. Absorb is green infrastructure for the purpose of stormwater management. With increased rain, we don't want to create more stress on our gray infrastructure. And then protect is looking at barrier buffer zones for green infrastructure.
Oh, that's very exciting. It's also great to have catchy names and slogan, because that really, it's important to make it attractive and something people want to talk about and be associated with. So that's definitely not as important, but also very, very important. Since we're here in a transatlantic session, what is the role, or how important is learning from European cities, or how do you exchange with European cities, bringing your experiences to them?
Yes, for me personally, I'm a member of the ELEEP network, which you heard Max introduce earlier. And that's been a vital learning experience. We actually ended a climate study tour a few weeks ago and got to see in person what is happening and what innovative things are happening across Europe. And the cohort that went was a mix of Americans and Europeans from different levels of government, different sectors, some actually private sector. So it created this really unique space to think creatively, innovatively in a collaborative way. And we're going to continue that kind of work in doing policy research together in a transatlantic way. and hopefully then applying that research in each of our cities. And professionally also, we, for example, have a partnership with the Dutch consulate in Boston and did a delegation exchange there. And that's been a huge learning experience. For us, the benefit is the Dutch know very well how to live with water. We're expecting a lot more water and sea level rise. And so what can we learn? What tools can we adopt and keep us protected?
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. In the interest of allowing everybody here on the panel to speak first, we're going to have the open Q&A at the end with what's left then at the end. That's not saying we don't have a Q&A, it's just a realistic approach. So thank you very much. And you'll be back online when we go into the Q&A. Now to our second panelist. Tüzcin, thank you for joining us here today. You're a professor at the Istanbul Technical University, and you work there on post-carbon cities or sustainable cities, and work also in European research contexts with other colleagues from Europe and beyond. And you just came back actually from a conference in the United States, in Minneapolis, in Minnesota. So you are also a very transatlantic researcher. Thank you for joining us here today. And I was hoping you would tell us a little bit about the work that you do in Istanbul with cities, or how you work or learn from other experiences in Europe and in the United States, and how this helps you integrating climate change mitigation and adaptation. And I think we have a few slides here as well. So this is the pointer, and you can just go forward. It should, yes, one more.
Oh, this is.
So go through that.
Okay.
Yes, perfect.
Okay, thank you very much. I am from Istanbul, and everybody, I guess everybody knows about Istanbul. Istanbul is a mega city, and Istanbul is more than a city. Istanbul means Turkey most of the cases. So what I'm telling to you today, there are some global challenges and international challenges, and Istanbul has been affected also very strongly from all these developments and challenges. So today I would like to tell you about energy issues, and I would like to link the climate change adaptation and mitigation with the energy issues, because Turkey is on the different energy corridors. So geographically, the country is in a very hot spot, and Istanbul is also affected very much from these developments in the region. So just recently, just 1 month ago, the 23rd World Energy Congress was held in Istanbul, and the main theme of the Congress was embracing new frontiers. The event brought together more than 10,000 world leaders in the field of energy, and the future visions for the global energy industry as well as opportunities were discussed at the Congress. So what is the situation and position of Turkey and also Istanbul within this context? The main priority for Turkey is the promotion of East-West and North-South energy corridors through delivery of Caspian, Middle Eastern, and Central Asian energy resources to European and world markets via Turkey. So this is a very critical thing. And the other aspect and the main challenge for Turkey, Turkey is an emerging country. The country has become one of the fastest growing energy markets in the world. And Turkey is ranked as second after China in terms of natural gas and electricity demand growth. So this is the main challenge, and Turkey's demand for energy is nearly 3 times higher than the world average. So what does it mean for Istanbul? Istanbul's economy is more than 130 countries. So this demand is also very high for the city. And then nowadays, 25% of the total energy demand is being met by domestic resources, and the main challenge for Turkey is to realize its own energy security. So to diversify its energy supply routes and source countries, increase the share of renewable and include also the nuclear in its energy mix, and take significant steps to increase energy efficiency and contribute to Europe's energy security is the main aim of the country. And then Istanbul Energy Exchange Istanbul exists. Was established in order to lead the development of energy market through managing it in an effective, transparent, and reliable manner last year. So this is the ambition for 2023. So this is the Centennial Foundation of the Republic. I won't go to the numbers, of course, but this is the main challenge now in the country and for the city. And between this COP22 and then the next COP 23, the country will, and also Istanbul will focus on this global and international aspects of development, and this energy dependency is the main issue. And with this, let's say, vision for the future, will shape also all the policies at the city level. Thank you.
So thank you, Tüzcin. Just to get back to you right away. So you talk about climate and energy goals in Istanbul and Turkey, and you said it's a lot, it's synonymous in a way. However, you are also, it's a country on the Mediterranean, it's a country in a semi-arid climate in some ways. How is your outlook from the city level looking at adaptation needs, speaking of heat waves or water scarcity, or even rising sea levels? And what do you do to combine both and to get these co-benefits? Do you have an approach there?
So Istanbul cannot compete with Copenhagen. So we are in the beginning of this process, of course. So we don't have a local climate plan yet. We have so many big infrastructure projects, and they are very helpful for adaptation and mitigation. But we are in the beginning of this local climate planning. So we have learned a lot during the POCACITO project, of course, from other cities in our project project consortium. But I would like to mention also managing a megacity is more challenging than managing any other city. So we have more problems maybe, but it's also more difficult and more challenging to manage a city with 15 million population, and 20% of the total population of the country is living in this city. So there are many international corporations also. So we learn a lot from Europe, and I think we can offer also different experiences from our city. But we have lots of international agreements with Russia about Turkish stream, blue stream, this kind of streams for natural gas. We have some international cooperation with Israel and Azerbaijan and Cyprus. The Mediterranean energy corridor is another important issue. Regarding, for example, the heat island effect, so it will take time, of course, because the city is huge and then urban sprawl is very demanding, and we are losing our green spaces. So there are many challenges also there.
Thank you, Tüzcin. Thank you. It was very interesting when you said you don't have a local climate plan, either for mitigation or adaptation or for both. So that's very interesting. And so I really hope, I truly hope that, you know, even though you have a lot of other challenges, you mentioned that, that this will be a topic on the agenda, and that maybe there can be learning processes, including across the Atlantic. So thank you for that input. And now I want to turn to our third panelist here today. Dr. Anne Jensen is a senior researcher in environmental policy analysis at the Aarhus University in Denmark. She has a PhD in European policy making and mobility, and has worked extensively, including with us on the Post-Carbon Cities project, on urban mobility and the role of local governments. And I want to thank you for being here today with us, or you already have the pointer, perfect. And I want to ask you to give us a little bit of a perspective. Of course, I said Aarhus University, but the focus is on Copenhagen, not very far in Denmark. And you work a lot with the municipality in Copenhagen. And I wanted to ask you, since you now represent here a generally accepted global climate leader, Copenhagen, what challenges do you still see in that global climate leader? So we see very different cities here at the on the panel. And so what is where are your challenges? What is difficult from your perspective, especially when we look to the topic, integrating mitigation and adaptation. So
yes, thank you very much, Max. It's a pleasure being here. And I think we should start by, Copenhagen is the capital of Denmark. It's a small, big city, not like Istanbul. There's about 1.7 million people in the greater Copenhagen area. It's about 30% of Denmark's population, but still it's a small city. And about 10 years ago, they crafted their first vision in the city for becoming, for that in post-carbon vision. It's called the Eco Metropolis. And it had a goal of reducing CO2 emissions by 20% by 2015. In 2013, they were at, I think it was 21% reductions. And they made a new, an updated vision for 2025, which is Copenhagen becoming carbon neutral by 2025, which is the one I have on the slide here. At the same time, and in parallel with this, since the vision from 2007, climate adaptation has been targeted, and this is primarily due to some very active people in the municipality, but also because Copenhagen experienced some really severe climate events in 2010 and 2011, where big parts of the city, including national archives and national hospital and the parliament, they were flooded. So they crafted a climate adaptation plan. I couldn't find one with an English translation, but it's the one that says Copenhagen Klimatilpasningsplan, which is climate adaptation plan. And even though they have moved forward in both mitigation and in adaptation, lots of challenges still exist here. And one of the things that connected the climate mitigation and the climate adaptation was that parallel to the visions, the key executives in the municipality, the key the directors of the different departments of the city council, they crafted a narrative for the city, which is called the Copenhagen story, where they integrated the climate mitigation activities, becoming climate neutral, with the climate adaptation and some and other areas that were very close to the citizen, like the city becoming more livable, focusing on people in the city, a city for people, they called it, and on mobility, which is, as in all cities, is a big issue. But while they were still focusing on these things, some parts have been difficult to manage and are still challenges, and this concerns the rising car traffic, because as you could see on Barbara Höhn's slides, in Germany, transport was the same. It's the same in Denmark, and including in Copenhagen, where you have cars emitting more CO2, not even though they're more energy efficient. And in Copenhagen, you have 50% now people using the bike. They cycle to work or study-related travels, but still you have problems with congestion and air pollution. Also, you have still have challenges in managing the 100 years flooding events that are, or even the 50 years flooding events. And you have a rising concern for the social inequality that comes with a city becoming more prosperous, or it has come in Copenhagen. Copenhagen has focused very much on using nature-based solutions on green and blue areas as a way of mitigating urban heat islands, as a way of mitigating climate adaptation, flooding. So they are developing the city in a way that makes it much more inhabitable and much more nice to live in. So people with families and high education, etc., they stay in the city, pushing the less affluent people further out. And this is one of the big challenges, the social inequality and the access to amenities, coming with the greening of the city and the better, the more amiable urban spaces. Yeah.
Well, thank you. And I think it's amazing to see how much has happened already, and also how citizen-oriented you are in a lot of ways, but there's still new challenges coming up. Because the more beautiful you make Copenhagen, the more people want to move there. It's kind of the curse also of very beautiful spots in nature, or cities that attract too many tourists. You don't not only attract tourists, but people want to live there, and that drives up the pricing for everybody. Very interesting question, and definitely not limited to Copenhagen. I mean, we see that, of course, in the US, in cities, maybe even in Boston, and definitely in other large cities there. We see it in London, we see it in Paris, where people on a median income cannot afford to live even in the outskirts of the city. Very good point. I think we have quite a good moment now left for Q&A. I would like, we still have the microphone, the mobile microphone over there. So you can ask questions now to either individuals on the panel or open to the panel. And please go ahead. We have a hand up here, the gentleman in the gray shirt. And please, again, say your name and stick to the question part. Thank you very much.
Hi, thank you. Franco Montalto, Drexel University in Philadelphia. And the question I wanted to ask to the keynote speaker is the same. It was the same spirit of what we just heard in Copenhagen, that we know that cities, as they're confronting the challenges of climate, are facing other challenges, for example, inequality For example, the arrival, changes in population dynamics. In Europe, you have refugees, and I've been gathering examples of unique pilot projects where, in a small way, there have been where there have been sort of cross-pollination of solutions that aren't just connecting mitigation to adaptation, but going one step further and connecting mitigation to adaptation to, for example, jobs creation, or for example, other social resilience measures, creating opportunities for engagement or participation. So I was curious in the cities represented here it was highlighted in Copenhagen, but I want to know specifics. So specifically, and in the political context, what have you found as the most, are there win-win solutions that have been embraced by both those whose primary mission is thinking about climate, but also those whose primary mission is thinking about social issues that are faced by cities? Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. We give each panelist 1 minute to respond. Thank you. You can go ahead.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think it's a very relevant question. And one of the things that has actually made Copenhagen move forward in many of these areas is that they have always, all their initiatives have been based on that it should have co-benefits, never ever just having one, just climate adaptation or climate mitigation, but also showing something for the citizens and having it people-centered. And then it has been based also on they have a neighborhood, one neighborhood, and they're making a second neighborhood now, which is experimental, where they have used people initiatives and they've given people space, local citizens space to develop their own solutions in a way that made sense for them. So even though they wanted climate adaptation in this one area, people were more concerned about mobility and creating green spaces. So they used that as a stepping stone for developing adaptation solutions.
Yeah, that's a really tough question, and I think we're still in Boston trying to figure out how to move forward on that. This city has a big housing crunch right now, so there's a lot of demand for new construction, new building, and so developers tend to eye properties or spaces where they can buy land cheaply, and that tends to be environmentally not the best places. So we're looking at policy levers and zoning to see what we can reform there. But it's still in the works. And we're in the middle of the problem right now with housing issues and housing not being affordable for many people. But one small example of how we're marrying the three: equity, adaptation, mitigation, a very small one is there's been a boom in urban agriculture in a lot of communities where there isn't good food access to healthy, naturally grown foods. And so it's helping with stormwater management and also a service to those who live in those communities. And it's just incredible how much that's picked up throughout the city. But again, a very small step, and we're trying to figure out the larger issues.
Thank you. I think we had a question on that side. You have the microphone already. Perfect. Please go ahead. Keep it short.
All right, I will. Thank you. My name is Lisa Junghans, and I'm working for German Watch. And thank you for the very interesting presentations. And I very much agree with what also Bärbel Höhn said in the beginning. Cities do have a lot of potential in reducing emissions. However, one of the critique points that comes up every now and then in discussions is that there is no local MRV system for cities to really track if they are on track with their goals that they're committed to. So a lot of cities have joined the Compact of Mayors, the Global Compact of Mayors, and submitted those highly ambitious commitments, but if they're really reaching them, that's often under question, and there's the potential for greenwashing. And I'd be interested in your assessment if cities are actually on track, or if they have high targets but it's not really feasible in actually reaching them. Thanks.
So, thank you for the question. So let's keep the answers short, but I think every panelist should answer that question. It's a you should know.
My agency is trying to help municipalities refine their data collection. Even simple things like energy use, getting a proper inventory is very challenging. So we're trying to create some kind of uniformity of how cities and towns in our region are reporting. But it's still in the works, and then we're trying to help alleviate that mismatch and whether some municipalities are using incorrect numbers or not. Yeah.
Thank you, Axum. Tüzcin, do you want to say something about, because I remember in the project, getting data was also a challenge specifically in Istanbul.
So I would like to tell you that for some specific cities, the system works in a different way. So Istanbul is a primate city, and it's very important. But most of the cases, the decision about the city is not taken by city stakeholders, by Istanbul, but from the government agencies, from governmental institutes in Ankara. So this is the case for Istanbul. So there are some local, of course, some local initiatives, as Istanbul is a very big city. Istanbul is in a C40 cities group. Istanbul is involved also in many, at the municipality level, in many international associations. The city is doing many things, but most of the cases, the city cannot develop some local things independently, as the city represent the country.
Thank you. Thank you, Tüzcin. And yes, we noticed that challenge already dealing with EU-based cities and non-EU-based cities, different data availability and reliability, and then, of course, different governance structures, what you mentioned, Tüzcin. Thank you. Anna.
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, sometimes it's a challenge for cities to actually collect this kind of data, where you should maybe develop more approaches to citizen science, so you could get sort of reliable data from citizens. At the same time, I think in Copenhagen, for example, there's this green accounting, where they annually publish their performance within energy, waste, transport, etc., etc. And in order to do that in a way that's reliable, it should also be in a way where it's okay to make a mistake, or it's not, you know, it should be okay to say we're not performing well here. Like Copenhagen, they have bad air quality within some of the really bad air quality in some areas. They're not doing well on waste, for example. And creating this kind of culture might also stimulate that you can get more cities to actually say, okay, we want to be public about this kind of data and reliable about it.
That's a very good point. Thank you. To make it actually possible to not just always succeed and excel every year, bigger, better, more. We have time for one final question in the Q&A. The gentleman at the back.
John Englert from Melbourne, Australia. Heat waves are a big issue in our cities, Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth. So that extreme heat waves have a big health impact. In fact, they kill more people than bushfires in Australia. So we're looking at trying to ameliorate the urban heat island effect in our cities, because temperature differences can be, yes, up to 10 degrees more in the cities than the surrounding countryside. So we need to grow our urban tree canopy, is one way we can start looking at ameliorating the urban heat island effect.
We need to get the question part. Sorry.
Okay, so I'm looking at what other ways can we use to try and get the heat of cities cooler.
Okay.
Adaptation.
Good. Now, some very quick thoughts. Anne, is that an issue in Copenhagen?
A little bit, but not too much. So I don't think I would be the expert.
Okay. Maybe Boston, you mentioned little air conditioning prevalence, so maybe that's more of an issue.
Green infrastructures are a big approach too, I would say. We feel there's a lot of bang for your buck there. If there is cooling that's needed for new construction, we are talking about better design, passive design. And so that's very much working with the developer community to move that along. And then if cooling must be added, renewable heating and cooling, renewable cooling in this case, technologies, geothermal, air source heat pumps. But yeah, we're experiencing a similar thing, and it's newer for Boston, the heat wave thing. So we're exploring.
Perfect, thank you. Now, Istanbul is certainly exposed to heat waves, right?
Yeah, yeah, but we have also some good examples. These examples can be seen in many other cities as well. But vertical gardens or roof vegetation help. I think that they help a lot to decrease a little bit the heat, especially in the high density urban centers. This is a trend now. There are so many buildings with vertical vegetation and roof vegetation also in Istanbul.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So it's 12:40. We go into the closing round now. I want to ask each of the panelists, because today is the closing day of COP22. So we are now ending of this COP, and then in about a year is the next one. What do you personally want to do to foster city level mitigation and adaptation in the integration of the two in the coming year? Do you have any ideas already? It can be very simple, very applied, or high level transatlantic dimension. Who wants to go first? I see Axum.
Okay. At a high level, we have this Metro Mayors Coalition platform of 14 communities. They've largely focused on preparedness issues because they have shared infrastructure. And just yesterday, they decided, we should also address mitigation as a region. So for me, moving forward in the next few months, it's identifying where are those synergies with mitigation adaptation, and how can we use this collective of 14 cities, which is very unique in Massachusetts, to drive that forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anna, do you want to go next?
Sure. And I think one of the challenges for working with a city like Copenhagen is for one thing, is to upscale the experience of Copenhagen, because it's a wealthy city, it's a welfare country, et cetera, et cetera. And at the moment, Copenhagen has a very global outreach, but to help them even more upscale this, especially with the experimental neighborhoods and in integrating the adaptation solutions with the mitigation solutions. The other one is to refine the knowledge bases. I'm a researcher, so this is also one of the things where I think we can play a big role, and that's increasing the evidence for what works and what doesn't work, and what is the impact of doing this rather than this at a global scale. And I work also at very much at a European scale, where I think this is very important.
Thank you, Anna. And now, Tüzcin, what do you plan for the coming year?
Yeah. I think the challenges are both at the local, national, but also international level. The POCACITO project was a starting point for the municipality, Istanbul municipality, and then they requested to take our findings within the project and to put on their agenda and in their strategic plans. So this is a good result at the end. Of course, we will continue to cooperate at the European level for different projects, and there are many things to learn from each other, because Istanbul is a real laboratory that we can do many research and many implementation. But also it depends on the context, and we need to cooperate also not only with Europe but other cities, and transatlantic perspectives we should accept. Just one sentence. I was in Karachi a few months ago, and then when I gave a speech about Istanbul there, then all Karachi people and the audience, the conference audience, asked me how we have succeeded in Istanbul to do many things. So when we compare Istanbul with Copenhagen, maybe the city has many challenges, but when we compare Istanbul with Karachi, another mega city, so Istanbul has made a good progress, and we
That's
need
good.
some mega cities also to compare Istanbul, because in Europe there is no comparable city in terms of the size and the huge challenges and problems.
Right, and in Asia, of course, there's many large cities, also in Latin America and in Africa. So we definitely need to open our eyes. I want to say, let's close this session. I want to thank the three panelists and of course our keynote speaker who had to leave earlier, but let's thank our three panelists for their contributions here today. I also want to thank you for your great questions and patience and keeping it tight. It's 12:45, round of applause, then going out for the photo. Thank you. And now you can just make it in time. There's a buffet with lunch, not really lunch, but some snacks on the left side when you exit. And then for the photo shoot, you then exit to the main corridor and then towards the exit of the COP. And there's a photo shoot right now. So it would be great if everybody can move there. It's supposed to become the biggest UNFCCC photo shoot in history. Let's help make it that way. Thank you and have a good rest of the COP. Thank you.